name is Grace, and you're listening to the Homebody Podcast. Hello, beautiful people. Tuning in August 2025 here for our monthly episode that currently releases on the first Thursday of every month. I had a whole other plan and topic I wanted to share about for this month, but when I went to record it, it was just not it. It was not time. There was no flow. And I'm past my forcing era. So instead of publishing it anyways, I got quiet and this new direction emerged in its simplicity where I just felt I was supposed to share and talk more specifically about my work, the stance of my services and offerings, where it's landed now. And I think I'm always talking about my work on the podcast, but I think also there's a way that I think I'm always just painting my colors all over the room, but then people can still be like, what room are we in? And I know many of you enjoy the ideas and perspectives I share, but you may not understand how they land into actual services and offerings and what the wider soil is. So I'm going to share more about some of those key ingredients here, the stance from which I'm offering what I do, what the bigger picture is. And I know many of you have been listening to the podcast for a really long time, and thank you for that. And I see others of you have been listening your way back through the podcast time lately, whether you're new or you're revisiting much older episodes. And back in 2019, when I started this podcast, that's really all I knew I was up to at the time. It was very open-ended. I was just grabbing at a thread where almost everything else was unknown, except I wanted to start a podcast. And when I started it, I was in a lot of pain. I was coming off of a very big, humiliating public failure, closing my yoga and Pilates studio, filing bankruptcy, letting myself down, letting a lot of other people down. There was a lot of hurt and embarrassment, and I was hitting this whole new level of rock bottom. I had gotten married and moved into my husband's bachelor pad where we were sleeping on a rock-hard mattress on the floor and listening to rats scurry around in the HVAC ducts and adopting dogs. And there's a way that I have been very publicly evolving and integrating and coming into form for the past 6 years on this podcast. And I would say it's taken all of those 6 years for me to really feel the confidence and the foundation and the clarity and the destiny of where I am now and the chapter of my work I'm in now that feels absolutely sparkling and crystal and like absolutely this was made for me. And I am made for it. And I'm now entering year 7, which is a very important number. And all of these past strands and threads have really come together. Even old strands and threads from even my childhood are coming together. And I'm able to really articulate and understand their synthesis in a way that I couldn't before. I won't get into all of those on this podcast, but I'm happy to talk about them more in the future. But I'm also entering my 40th year in this iteration of being a human. I'm about to enter my 40th year. And as Carl Jung said, 40 is really when life starts, and everything before that is just research. Something about that feels really true. So I very viscerally feel a new chapter already on and future incoming. And I want to thank you all who've been listening this whole time, opening my emails, taking my classes and courses and sharing my work, coming onto the show to be interviewed. I'm just so deeply grateful. And I very much enjoy and appreciate and celebrate being in this space with you all. So flashback to when I started this podcast. It's understandable that after such an epic failure and a massive ego death and a radical upsetting in what I thought was going to be the trajectory of my life or my big plans for at least the next decade, they all completely collapsed around me, and I felt really lost and confused and wandering in the dark. Except I knew I wanted to start a podcast. And of course, the way that those dark nights of the soul do, gratefully, brought up all of my shadow stuff, all the parts of me that I don't like, would prefer to keep under the rug. Of course, they came to say hello and get invited to the table. And one of those was feeling like my gifts don't make sense. Nothing I'm good at makes sense, right? I spent many years trying to get a quote normal job so that I could do more of this spiritual work, magical work, occult work kind of on the side and not have any pressure on it. And none of those doors worked out. There's a way that was absolutely not what I'm here to do. And it was almost hilariously blocked from all of my attempts. And whenever I would get quiet in moments of devotion and contemplation, moments of deep listening, I could feel myself asking, what's the deal? Like, what am I actually here to do? What am I good at? What's the field that I plug into? And I would always hear the word priestess. Always. Priestess. And I had a lot of aversion to that word. I didn't say it out loud for years. And I also had a lot of aversion to doing obviously and exclusively spiritual work in general. I had a lot of shadow and shame around that, a lot of fear around that. I also had a lot of parental shadow around that. And the word took me on a wild ride. And when people are like, what's the inspiration for your work? Or how do you orient yourself as a priestess? I think it means different things to different people. It is an old role, an ancient role. And so in summary, sometimes what I share to both capture some of the tone and sympathies of my work is I just say, I live up the pussy of the feminine. I serve the Great Mother, the Holy Whore, and the Magdalene, and they are the soil, the synthesis, and the medicine, the source for all of the things that I teach and share and offer to others. And in this priestess role, I do it from this ministerial stance with the tools of priestess work. On a practical level, it means to me, like a priest, there's a way that we kind of know what we would go to that for, right? Someone who could officiate a wedding or a funeral, or someone who, when someone's dying, we would go to them and ask for support or anointing or prayer. And however, it does differ in this traditional sense where it's not this hierarchical position, like, oh, this quote, holy person has secret special access to the divine. That's not at all what it is. Everyone has equal access to the divine. It's just we're all oriented to carrying that presence, and our service with that presence is different. So there's nothing about this role where it's some exclusive gated relationship at all. It's not hierarchical at all. That's not what's happening. And the priestess role has manifested in many different ways across history, and that's way too big of a topic to go into now. Happy to do an episode on that sometime in the future. But the way I relate to it is, in addition to training and accountability and tools that feel very specific to me, on a wider perspective, it's someone who's devoted to be an embodiment, a living transmission, and a facilitator for the mysteries of the alchemical feminine. Someone who is cultivating the spiritual imagination, creating and holding actual transformational space, oracular space, and weaving the mystery through sessions and service and ritual to support both the everyday human journey, but also someone who can show up in life's great transitions and initiations in ways that our culture is not really equipped to support, I think, in this apocalyptic time, but also in a really impoverished time. I think we live in an era that is deeply impoverished in our spiritual imagination. And I think living a regular, everyday 9-to-5 normie life, we can really not notice that, except when we get to some of life's bigger moments and initiations, when someone dies, when, I can't tell you how many weddings I've been to where I can tell that people are floundering at how to make this special. They don't know how to bring in spirit. And I was talking to someone about funerals and death work lately, and they were sharing with me about when their brother died. They're not, religious people, but they were still desiring to make the funeral something special. There's a way that they felt themselves floundering in that. And you don't have to be religious to bring in the element of soul and spirit. And I think there's a way that people don't know how to do that. That's what I mean by cultivating the spiritual imagination and supporting that. And there's a way also that life can bring us to these precipices and transformational moments, but also a priestess is someone who can create those transformational moments in that oracular space where you can create space where we can receive a moment of grace and feel touched by the mystery and put yet another plank down in the bridge, the embodied bridge of living the mystery ourselves. If we never touch it, if we never find access to that edge, if we don't know where the field of grace is, if we don't understand how to contact the mystery or to build that connection ourselves, it's not something we have to wait for. It's not something that's actually outside of you. And the way that I relate to priestess work and ceremonial work, etc., is that that's what it's designed to do, to create space where you can deepen and strengthen the mystery of that connection within yourself. So it's not a stranger. And I think it's a role of healing and devotion and embodiment. And the ways that it manifests in my life is through teaching, some of which I do on this podcast, some of it I do in my membership or in sessions, facilitating ceremonial space, both in person and online, ritual, initiation, soothsaying. Sometimes I'll say soothslaying, which I think is funny. And cultivating that spiritual imagination through stories and myth and teaching. And again, ceremony that brings that alive within us. And it's really this riding that great snake of life in a way that is devoted to the beauty and the pouring out and the erotic and the great mysterious invitations all around us for becoming fully human and supporting the great work and each person's unique path to that. Because while each path is unique, the principles and the mechanics, the truths, the laws underlying that mystical field are the same. However, it is complex and unique in that our embodied ways that we find the doorknobs to that path can feel really specific, and they are sometimes exquisitely precise and uniquely, perfectly touch the places where you're also wounded and feel ashamed, because those are waiting to be healed. At least that has been my experience, and it's what I see a lot in others as well. The place where there's still pain, the place where there's still wounding, the other side of that is your destiny. The other side of that is the unique embodied elixir of what the gift is to that. And the way that this elixir has really landed for me is erotic devotion. On my homepage, I changed sort of the subheading to erotic devotion for modern mystics. And it's just really, when it came in, it was like, yes, this is the refinement in how I articulate this. And I think it's the most understandable way to communicate this dual value on both our essence and our eternal selves, the great work of the soul, while also worshiping this experience of embodiment. honoring this great journey, this tantric journey, in my opinion, that we are on is both embodiment and divinity, spirit and matter, and it's the work of unionizing the two. All sexual metaphors and euphemisms welcome here, and every experience and moment of our life is an opportunity to engage with that and alchemize, which is our great work. And it's not that we're just spirit and we have to endure this meat suit. I don't think that. And I don't teach or create spaces where that's the proposition. And it's also not just that like everything my body wants right now is totally it and in my service, YOLO. It's not that either. We'll just think about the soul when we die. Like it's not that either. It's where our desire to be here and be in a body and experience hits this planet with all of its wildness and suffering and ecstasy, where it meets our hearts open and touches the unitive field. That's the bridge. That's the work. Being in an alchemical relationship with all of that. And over time, it cultivates relational wholeness, both within us and without us. That's the journey, I think. And it absolutely includes pelvis and pussy and power and pleasure. It is deeply incarnational, and those things root us into the body. Again, there are many ways that it doesn't, which is, again, a topic for another time. But when done alchemically and in harmony and in healing, they are deeply incarnational. But they also do not succumb to the enslavement of the illusion that what we see is all there is. The material world is it. And so you can see with some of the complexity and the inherent relation within this, the ecosystem of this, how this would ask us to be in a very alive dance with our life and with life itself. And that's something that we often need support and guidance and healing around. And that's what my work is. It's all of that relation. It's both directions. And a lot of the somatic people are like, it's all the body and the nervous system and getting back to our wild animal selves. And that's true. Absolutely. All of that. I've healed so much from somatic work. It is deeply valuable, but I've noticed that they tend to shy away from or even shun ecstatic experience and mystical consciousness. And I don't see those as contradictory. In fact, for me, the more somatic healing I did, the more I was able to hold authentic ecstatic experience and mystical consciousness. And then there's also the people who are just getting high on ecstatic experience. Absolutely, but what about the body? What about how to live out what's true for matter and not bypass it or transcend it or escape it? So there's a way where we can choose a side and lean towards one as if that's the only thing that's true. And I don't mean that everyone is supposed to be at the synthesis of this. I just think that's my unique gift, is at synthesis. And I also find that there's a way that both camps, the sort of ecstatic mystical people and then like the wild only embodiment people, can lean hard away from any conversation around the erotic, which is the spark that drives us towards life and towards the beloved, which is at the core of the mystery, in my opinion. So I'm really turned on by and really standing at the synthesis. It's taken a lot of healing inside of me to really recognize that that's my gift, is being at the edge and being at the intersection of things. And the mysterious unification of things is really my gift and what I enjoy and what I'm really turned on by. It's not either or. And what each life produces, what your life produces and becomes within this holy tension is unique. And it needs support and witnessing and tools and teaching, and that's my work. All of your contradictions are welcome because they are the essential ingredient. They are not to be avoided or bypassed. You are called to be a poetic, embodied paradox. And so in this time of extreme outer polarization and discomfort, there is a tendency to lean harder towards extremes. But actually, I think that's where we're called to lean even more into the great tension of both. The tension between pleasure and power, divine and mortal, and alchemize something even more alive into our humanity and the world at large. And obviously, we're in a time of a lot of change, a lot of upheaval. I think we're kind of at the tip of that, and you could call it an apocalyptic time, if you will. An apocalypse means unveiling or revelation. And there's a lot I could say about that. But for now, we'll just say, what is being revealed? If it's an apocalyptic time, what's the unveiling when the clouds roll back? What's revealed behind the spaghetti strap slipping off of the shoulder? I think it's the feminine, the principle and direction of embodiment, incarnation, and the meeting place of beginning and end. The great pussy portal in the sky that births us and meets us at death, the whore coming up out of the desert like the rich slut for life that she is, and the Magdalene, the relentless lover, and the alchemical feminine cosmic servant, transformed by love that is stronger than death. I think that's what's being unveiled. That's the soil and soul of my work. And it's this constellation, this tension that holds up the bounds of all the ways that I show up. And this invitation for relational wholeness, erotic devotion, it's a place where we have experienced a lot of wounding, both in our desire for relation with spirit and with the divine, but also in relationship with one another, and I'll be in circles and see people totally enjoying the sense of palpable, tangible connection with the divine. But then as soon as someone mentions their partner or their sex life, I see their whole countenance drop and go dim. Well, that means that's on the table. There's no stone left unturned in the great game. That's part of the life. There's a way that we want to retreat from not the shame I have around this, not the difficulty I have with this, not the resentment with my spouse, not this embodiment piece, or not this way that I feel super in my body, but I feel super separate from God, right? That's the whole other camp. A lot of you are very sensitive and actually feel very connected to spirit and very connected to the divine, but it's the embodiment piece and the relational piece and the money and the material and the orgasm, all of that is sort of where the pain is. And then there's another camp of you, all of you really delicious earth signs out there that are so good with the homework and so good with the material world, but you sometimes struggle on the side of feeling like, where's my essence? Why does the sense of the divine feel really far away? And I'm aware that, all of you are listening to the show. I think about all of you and I'm aware of all of you. All of it's on the table. There's no escaping that shit. The point of your life is not to go get high and circle and then come down and be in your misery and wounding the rest of the time. And vice versa. It's not to get trapped in the appearance of being successful in the material world, but then ignoring the inner light of the soul, which is our eye of the heart, the connection to the divine, is to transform and transmute all of it. All of it's on the table and up for grabs to become unionized and harmonized. All of you is the offering on the table. All of you is the offering in the fire, getting burned as incense to the gods who is the self. It includes sexual healing and reclamation, but also on a much more essential erotic layer. It's the layer of the heart and spirit and how they meet together with your body as your life's spark plug and your desire to touch life with your whole self. Joanna Macy passed away recently, and I keep meaning to write a newsletter about her, just like the legacy of her work and what it's meant to me. But there was an email that came out as soon as she went into hospice that said she loved every drop of life. And I thought, that is the perfect way to say that. And honestly, that's all that I would want someone to write about me. She absolutely loved every drop of life. That's the erotic layer, which can manifest in your unique composition in a myriad of ways. It isn't only spirit and touching the unitive field, but it is absolutely that. It isn't only sexual or sensual, but it absolutely is. And until you are a walking paradox, a poetic, unified contradiction, there's stuff to get into. It's on deck, it's up for transformation, no stone unturned. And that's the premise and the supportive field of all my offerings and what I'm here to do and support you with. And the last couple things I'll share here are just a couple of soapboxes that I feel often come up around some of these topics. I think when we talk about the alchemical feminine, especially throughout history, it gets really conflated with the victim card. Like people bring it up and then it's automatically all they talk about is how she was persecuted by the patriarchy. And like, that's absolutely true, right? There's a lot of wounding, a lot of shit out there that's out of balance in history and it's full of pain and persecution. That is absolutely true. And that's not the full picture. Because there's a lot of wounding there, it's easy to see that as the only option of this kind of embodiment, and it is absolutely not. I shared a transmission on the podcast back in November, and it was just before the election, and the huge sense that I felt like, I got like possessed by the goddess. And the sense was like, you really think ultimate reality and what happens on this plane is left up to these fools? Ha 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 ha. Like, it was just like hilarious that we would think that. And I think we do diminish the power of the alchemical feminine when we just say, well, it's just the ways that we've been victimized. It's just the witch wound. It's not. That wasn't the message. That's not the legacy. There's a new moon and there's a full moon. Whose world is it? Sometimes when it's the new moon, it's dark and you can't see it. Does it mean it went away? Does it mean she has no power? No, it doesn't mean that. Now you see her, now you don't. Is she constantly persecuted and victimized underground? Or is it just dark moon? Or is it just death time? What if those moments are not the enemy? There's a way that we have to be with, honestly, our wounds, the things that really hurt, things that have left us where we're authentically and truly been victimized by situations. And the invitation of the path is not doubled down on that status. That is simply the doorway to the threshold of the beginning of a journey. And I find it really interesting when I read, particularly Mary Magdalene is one of my capital people, my capital energies and frequencies. And when people are talking about the Magdalene, and then they go into a long tirade that's exclusively about persecution and feeling defeated by the world. And that's not her legacy. That's actually not anything in the writing that has her name on it. Someone who would have understandably had every right to be like, fuck the patriarchy, I've suffered so much, I've lost everything. But that's not the message. That's not the legacy. The message was instead, become fully human. Love is stronger than death. Freedom is an inside job. Pour it out. That's the message. Get absolutely full of freedom and love from the unitive field of reality and then pour it all out because it never runs out. Love with your whole self, whole pussy, all the love, all the world, pour it out and feel the ecstasy of that. In your body, in the eye of your heart, in your pelvis, and in your soul. The mysterious smoothie that is the pain pleasure together of being human that is also somehow orgasmic when we open to it and get turned on by it and open to it. That's the message. That's what she said. Spiritual work is not just about lighting candles and then thinking about the wound. There's a way that we need to be met there at times, but there's other ways that we're just hanging out there because that's where we're comfortable and that's the story that we understand. In the pain and in the grief, we must be met and honored there 100%. Nothing can get bypassed. And the invitation is not to be seen in pain and grief as if that's the only option. It's that everything can be alchemized into gold. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt anymore. It just means it's be a part of a larger quilt that connects to the beauty. That is what being a mage is. A presence that can churn experience into gold. That's what magic is. That's what spiritual practice is learning to do that. Not bypassing, transmutating. Embodying the contradiction, the both, the all. Embodying that freedom that no longer needs everyone to like you or understand you. If you no longer need everything to be okay, you're free. If you're no longer only just running from pain and fear, you're free. It's not about not having pain. It's being free from needing to not be in pain. And also that fear or the unprocessed pain often is in the way of us actually absorbing the pleasure and joy available to us in the moment, even if it's just in small ways. If it's hardened or crystallized in our nervous system or in our heart on any level, it's blocking the ways that we can sip from the gratitude of life. We have to be free to experience all of it in order to receive the things that we desire, in order to receive all that's available to us. We have to be soft. And if you're waiting for the jailer to hand you the keys to get out of jail, it's never going to fucking happen. Oh, when my dad apologizes, or when my mom does X, or if my husband would just say Y, or if the world would just stop hurting my feelings, then I would be free. That's not how it works. Freedom is an inside job. It happens when you have a life orgasm so fucking great that you shatter the walls. The angels can't help but come and break you out because they hear you're singing. It's not just a physical healing somatic journey, though it is that. It is not just an ecstatic, mystical, spiritual journey, though it is that as well. It is both, and Eros is at the heart of it. The erotic is at the heart of it, and that's the synthesis where I'm supporting and offering space and healing. And when we have this freedom manifested inside of us, then our presence manifests that freedom outside of us. That's how change in the world actually happens. That's why someone like Nelson Mandela can have the effect that he did, because he already had that world, that vision, fully embodied, that unitive field free on the inside of him. And so that is his legacy outside of him. And because it is an inside job, that is why it's spiritual work. Making the unconscious conscious is not just a somatic journey. It's not just a cognitive process. It's where all the layers of you come together at the synthesis. And the last soapbox I'll be on for the day is on spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is absolutely a thing. Sure, some people are just dissociating and skipping to positive affirmations and living in a very disembodied place. That is 100% true. Not going to deny that. That's not really the goal. That's not the journey, in my opinion. And there are people who are okay with uncertainty, and they are having a very different experience of life than people who are clinging to security. I see a lot of people getting very upset and being like, oh, they're just spiritual bypassing and I'm so upset. But what they really mean, maybe that person is spiritual bypassing, maybe they're not. But what someone really means when they're upset is that they just don't understand how someone else could be okay when they are so not okay. Are they spiritual bypassing? I don't know. They could just have more mastery than you, or they could just be at a different place on the mountain, or they could be at a level of integration that's different, that enables them to be in places that are difficult or challenging and uncertain in a much different way than someone who is not. And it's actually not bypassing. They're just embodying a bigger dose of the harmonized field. They're more plugged in to the field outside of this realm and embodying it here. And it's not bypassing. It's in their body. They're actually okay. Maybe it's spiritual bypassing. Maybe it's privilege. It could be all of them. And there's a way that it isn't spiritual bypassing when it marries with the truth and the wholeness of your animal body loving what it loves. It isn't spiritual bypassing if it's a way that the animal body is being a vehicle for this unitive, coherent field. I'm not saying spiritual bypassing doesn't exist. I'm just saying just because some people are okay doesn't mean that's necessarily what they're doing. When you decide to pursue the path of unifying your contradictions, embodying your full poetic paradox, you'll bump up against all the things that you'd rather not. You'll encounter all the ways that you do and don't want the thing that you want. And those are all invitations. And if you're saying yes to the great work path, you're also saying yes to turning over those stones. We need spaces and services and offerings to be supported in this wildly synthesizing journey. The world is highly divisive, polarized, and full of separation. And so to be on a path that is radically working towards this great alchemical inner and outer union of self, well, that takes a lot of support and relationship and erotic embodied space. And that's what I offer, and that's how I'm here to support you. It's not just working from the top down. It's not just working from the bottom up. It's both ends together, putting back together and remembering the dazzling prism orgasmic hologram at the center of your center, and getting everything that is in the way out of the way of its startling beauty and courage and power and resilience. Not so that you can avoid the world or bypass the world or the pain, but so that you can be in the world as a gift of service and free. On that note, here's the things that are currently, as of this podcast, on the table for what I offer and what I do. And if you're listening to this in the future, there's also a link to my website below where that will always be kept the most up to date. The free things I do are this podcast. I share a lot of things on this podcast, and I get feedback about it that is so helpful and nourishing for you all, and I appreciate that. You can listen on your favorite platform. You can listen on YouTube, and if you do enjoy it, a free way that you can be in reciprocity with this offering is to share it with other people, leave a review, subscribe. All of that helps so much, and that is a way of being in exchange with this free offering. I also share a newsletter that is maybe the most intimate way that I share publicly without any gatekeeping whatsoever. And there's a link to get on my newsletter below. And again, if you enjoy the newsletter, a way to be in free, money-wise, reciprocal exchange with that offering is to share it with someone else and let them know what you liked about it and invite them to subscribe as well. I have a red hot devotional membership offering called Ma, that has monthly ceremony calls, in-depth teaching with this level of synthesis and perspective that I don't see anywhere else. And as it grows, we're adding in more community calls and pleasure circles and things like that. So I invite you to get on the wait list in real time, whether you're listening to this when the episode drops or in the future, because the wait list is always going to be the first to know, and also even get exclusive access to some private invitations to join and special offers that I will not announce on the podcast or to the wider list. So if it's something that sounds even remotely enticing to you, I invite you to get on the wait list for Ma. I've recently reworked my one-on-one, I guess you could call it coaching, spiritual coaching, for lack of a better word, mentorship, guidance, where really synthesizing all of these things and customizing the tools and the wisdom and the presence that is needed for whatever is the more that you're screaming for. The somatic and the spirit, the erotic and the devotion, the shadow and the light, the reverent and the irreverent. If you're in a one-on-one container with me, you'll also get access to my Ma membership while you're in that container. And it is through application and also a short call post-application to make sure that we're the best fit for each other. And then my in-person work, if you're in the Atlanta area, I do in-person energy work and anointing sessions. I'm available for death work, weddings, funerals, and retreats. While retreats are things that I also enjoy planning and putting together on my own and inviting you into, I'm also open to becoming a part of a one-day non-residential retreat or putting together workshops or retreats for your particular group or community, even if it's not in the Atlanta area or the Southeast. So those are available through inquiry on my website. Thank you all so much for listening. Again, at the very least, if you enjoy listening, please share, subscribe, leave a review for this podcast, or sign up to my newsletter. And I appreciate all of the work that you're doing. I appreciate your presence and all the ways that you are devoted to being in this world and being alive in this world and touching the world with as much softness and freedom as you possibly can. And may I be of service to that. If there's certain things, certain topics that you want me to dive deeper on or share more on the podcast, you can leave me a note at the bottom of the show notes here. There's a link to send me a little voice note or a little email, and I listen to all of them, and they inform what I continue to share here in the public sphere for you all. All work is done for all beings, and may all beings be free. Jai Ma. Peace, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a few moments to subscribe to the show, leave us a review, and share the episode. These small tasks help our independent podcast so much. Be sure to also check out the show notes below to learn more about any resources, guests, or sponsors that we shared with you today. Our intro and outro music was created by artists Aaron Palovic and Jared Kelly. Our podcast logo was created by Elaine Stevenson, and this show is produced by Softer Sound Studio. Thank you for being here. Be well. Peace.